And the big story this evening, as the row over the Soros comment against the Modi Sarkar continues and reactions have been coming in ever since, the centre has in the latest suspended the FCRA license of the public policy think tank Centre for Policy Research. Sources tells Times Now that the FCRA license of the think tank was suspended on charges of violation of funding norms. Now, the CPR has issued a statement following the suspension of the license. The CPR has reiterated that the think tank is in complete compliance with the law and that they will fully cooperate with agencies, adding that they're confident that the matter will be resolved at the earliest. But in the meanwhile, amidst all of this, and given that this response has officially come in from the CPR, in fact, my colleague Priyank was first to access this detailed response on part of CPR. The BJP has come out with its own set of attacks, says that anti-India forces will be punished. Hear it from the BJP.
No one is above the law of the country. If you violate the law with impunity, there will be certain legal consequences that would follow. And you should not cry foul when you don't shy away from undertaking illegal activities to weaken our country. And action is taken and you cry foul. That is absolutely unacceptable. And legal action against such forces is imperative and will continue.
Let's listen into the other side, wherein some have come out with clear condemnation. Democratic Azad Party has come out to condemn the central government's decision. Party leader Taj Mohiuddin has termed it as extremely unfortunate. Listen in.
I don't know what government of India is doing. It was an organization and it used to help the Indian government. The policy research was to understand India, to go for any dangers of this which we are facing. And by that, the government of India had used to make the policies. It is unfortunate why they have stopped it. Our policy making will have the errors. We may not be knowing what is going to happen.
Let me quickly, before I introduce my guest this evening, go across to Bhavtosh, my colleague, joining us with more details. Bhavtosh, this is a big update coming in, certainly, especially given the IT raids that were conducted at the CPR's office premises last year. But the fact remains that in its response, CPR has come out to say that it has followed due process and procedure all throughout. What can you tell us about the latest? Because this suspension means that CPR cannot, for now, get in any sort of foreign funding.
Well, as of now, no statement has been issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs, but a detailed statement has been given by Centre for Policy Research. In fact, saying that yes, their FCRA funding has been suspended for a period of 18 months. Last September, their premises were also surveyed along with host of NGOs and think tanks. It is India's premier think tank and it's located in the heart of New Delhi. Even at that point of time, Centre for Policy Research had questioned the survey that went for nearly 3 days. Now, one of the donors of Centre for Policy Research is Namati Media Incorporation, which allegedly, it's being said, that was receiving fund from Open Source Foundation. Now, whether Ministry of Home Affairs come out with a statement, one has to wait and see, but it's being said that Open Source Foundation does allegedly receive funds from Soros Foundation, but it is all under investigation by the Income Tax Department. At that point of time when the searches happened, both Centre for Policy Research as well as Income Tax Department had issued statement giving their position as far as these surveys are concerned.
Okay, all right. Still awaiting for an official response from the MHA. Let's see how this plays out. Thank you, Bhavtosh, for joining us with all those details. Let's quickly, on that note, open this up. Our guest joining us this evening, we have Saira Shah Halim, political analyst, with us, along with Royden Roach, political analyst himself. We'll also be shortly joined by author Anurag Naidu. But my first question is to Saira Shah Halim on what her take is with regards to this development coming in. Still waiting for a response officially on part of the government. But the CPR has come out to say that, look, we've not violated any of the laws, no rules have been broken, and we've put out details of their statement. But all in all, what do you make of the suspension of their FCRA license?
Yeah. So, hi, good evening. Firstly, I believe these are simply trumped up charges against the FCRA because of the work they're doing, the commendable work they're doing, and they have been slightly critical of the center. So I think this is nothing but vindictive policies, because we have seen how these surveys were happening 5 months prior to this clampdown, because this survey was nothing but throttling of independent bodies which have nothing to do with the government, and these are basically policy research centers. And here I feel suspension is throttling of democracy. You're not allowing independent institutions to thrive and to run. You are intimidating them by putting some clause or the other, whereas this organization is very clear that they have not flouted any rules. They are following all the protocols, all the SOPs. So I really don't understand why the center has taken such a move. I think either they are getting scared of something. That is the reason. That's the reason. If you see, it's been a pattern. Like human rights organization, they are being shut down. Policy research centers.
So you're saying they're not quite in line with the government's thinking, its thought process, and has perhaps expressed its opinion against what the government truly believes in, and that's why we're seeing this kind of action come in. Mr. Anurag Naidu is also with us this evening. How would you respond to what Ms. Saira Shah Halim is saying? Because remember, the FCRA license of CPR was already under scrutiny after the income tax raids which were conducted in September last year on CPR and also Oxfam India. Those developments have been coming in, Mr. Naidu, since last year. So it's nothing new, but this certainly has raised several eyebrows, with many believing now that this is totally uncalled for.
So I think whether it is CPR or Oxfam or any other, I don't want to take penny parallels, but there have been a lot of missionaries that are running across India for several other purposes. I don't want to get into the details, but, holding on to an FCRA or cancelling an FCRA because of some critical non-compliance is absolutely a prerogative of the union government and of course the union home ministry. And if the decision has been taken, and also let's also understand when BJP came to power, and it is a fact that 2014 onwards there have been a very tough scrutiny of all the foreign investments or foreign donations coming through the routes of FCRA, and it has been much regulated now. There have been people always starting from 2014 making a lot of allegations on the government that you are restricting certain funds that are being used for certain societies, certain communities, certain religion, whatsoever. But the government has stood its ground. There have been things like this. Now you took an example of Oxfam. Now you took an example of CPR. These are the same people who have always been telling that, look, we have problems with the new FCRA guidelines. Look, we have problems with how the government is treating us and looking towards us. But the government stood its ground, and that's why it's making some people very jittery. It's making some people very uncomfortable because end of the day, if you really have everything
and Mr. Naidu, it's not been revoked. We can't say that the FCRA license has been revoked. We're just talking about a suspension for close to 180 days. So if they do comply and fall in line, their suspension will be taken back. So that's the big question on whether or not this controversy is also unnecessary. Right. Mr. Royden Roach, where do you stand on this? Because if we talk about Oxfam, because we just mentioned Oxfam and the IT raids that were conducted on Oxfam office premises as well last year, the Oxfam FCRA license has though been revoked, and this happened in January itself because they did not apply for renewal of the license. There are two different episodes that we're talking about here, but with regards to the suspension of the FCRA license, how do you see this? Because many are also seeing this in the wake of the George Soros episode and the remarks he made with regards to the regime change in India. Mr. Roach.
Well, good evening, everyone. See, when we look at the suspension, of the license, the first thing what we look at is the government is scared of something. It's very clear that the government is scared of something. The government doesn't want people to look into what's happening. They do not want them to do their job. They do not want them to speak against the atrocities of whatever happening in the country. They are scared of these things. And whenever such thing happens, they use the machinery to try and conduct raids and all these things which happen. Because it is happening again and again. The first thing is if the government had an IT raid and the government was clear and found something irregular in it, the government should come out with it. Before you suspending them, they should come out with it. They should come out and put it out in black and white and then let people know about it. But here what it is very clear, everyone knows about it, but the government is scared of such organizations. If we even talk about the missionary, like we spoke of the missionary, the missionary also, they were scared thinking that money is coming in from all over the place and, funds are coming in like a legal center so that they are spread to the country. But so many others never a threat to the country. Why only the BJP?
Okay.
Because the BJP doesn't want anyone to function.
But there again, Mr. Roach, comes the point of whether or not the law of the land is being followed. Mr. Naidu, how do you respond to what Ms. Shaira Salim is saying and also Royden Roach, because both of them are saying that the government is rattled by the works being conducted by the CPR. But let's quickly point out here that, here's an NGO that calls itself a leading public policy think tank. It was established in 1973. It's been conducting research to frame policies and create robust public discourse on issues that impact life in India. This is what it states on the website. But the fact remains that there are several who fund CPR, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Duke University, University of Pennsylvania. All of that has happened in the past as well. So why this kind of an apprehension or concern being raised today?
I think beautiful question, and this needs to be answered. I can actually draw one parallel between this BBC incident that we had of late, and I can also, relate it to what is happening with the CPR issue. Just because some of the Western agencies or corporations are donating, or just because some Western people who have global recognition are behind CPR, I don't want to discredit the credentials of CPR as an organization, but they cannot be running away from the fact that they need to comply to the policies and the compliances of the law of the land. If you are not complying to the policies and the law of the land, you are bound to have questions from the government, and you cannot say that, hey, look, somebody in America has donated us and he's very popular and you are not supposed to touch me and I'm sacrificed.
But on the face of it, they're coming out to say in the response that CPR has put out, Mr. Naidu, that in 2022 the IT department conducted IT survey at the CPR premises. As part of the survey follow-up process, CPR received several notices from the department, and following due process, detailed and exhaustive responses have been submitted to the department. CPR has and continues to cooperate fully with the authorities. So where do you see is the problem really, on why this action is being taken against them?
I mean, look, there is clear non-compliance. Yep, please go ahead.
See, when we talk about if there was a non-compliance, let us make it very clear. The government should be clear on this term and say that what is happening. When the government is not clear, when you're going in a grey area and you're not clear, then you don't have the right to suspend somebody's license. Why do you have to suspend? If the government has a problem and on the IT raid they had some evidence, they should come out and put out in the open domain.
Okay.
Why is the government hiding and still trying to...
Okay, we're still waiting for an official response, and hopefully one will come in soon. Thank you, Mr. Roach, for speaking to us. That question was in fact for Mr. Naidu, but there's also the larger picture of Namati, one of the organizations funding CPR, and how it can be traced to the Hungarian-American investor George Soros, who recently stirred massive outrage over his comments on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, accusing India and attempting a regime change in India. That is also being spoken of with this development coming in. Whether or not it holds any merit or has had any impact to play remains to be seen. Still waiting for that official response. Thank you, gentlemen, and Ms. Shaira Salim for joining us this evening.